Welcome to the It's Our Life's Work podcast, brought to you by Opus Vitae Construction here in Portland, Oregon.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of It's Our Life's Work podcast. We are here with two special guests from our company, Opus Vitae Construction in Portland, Oregon. We've got, of course, my partner in crime, Paul. Christine is not going to be here today for this episode, our other partner in crime. And we've got Drew Abel, who's a project manager at our company. Say hi, Drew.
Hello, everybody.
And then we've got the James Kistner, another project manager at our company.
Is that like the Ohio State?
It is. It's like the Ohio State, yeah. We got the James Kistner. Anybody that knows him knows that that's fitting. So what we wanted to kind of just talk about today was, like what the experience is like working at our company, doing things the way we do them, because we do things a bit unique in the industry. And we just want to get that out to our audience so that they understand what it might be like to engage with us, professionally. So I was going to start with Drew, just a little snippet of your background, basically, where you came from, how you got to be here.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into construction. I grew up with my father being a residential architect, so kind of grew up around the residential construction industry, but never really thought about it as a career until after college. I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and decided to work for a general contractor while I was just trying to test out different industries and interviews and all, those sorts of kind of post-college life things, and kind of just fell in love with it and loved being part of a team and building things and working with a group of people. And so kind of been doing that for, a couple of years, and then been a project manager now for going on 6 years. And yeah.
And so did your dad try and talk you out of going into the trades?
Not at all, no. Kind of, I played sports my whole life, and then I worked in athletics in college and kind of thought that's the way I was going to go. So it was never really a conversation we had. And it was kind of that thing after college where I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. And I asked him, hey, what about, construction? You work with a lot of contractors. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. If you want to give it a shot, go for it. And obviously he's been super supportive ever since. So, but before that, no, it was never like a, hey, you should do this, or hey, don't even think about it.
For sure. I mean, I kind of asked that a little bit jokingly, just because, those of us that have spent their entire career in the trades will always joke about like how it's kind of a rough go at times, and has been, I would say, more so in the past. It was a pretty rough and tumble industry, and it's definitely much more nice to people. That's true. I mean, I just think about my first job in construction. The company owner was a bit of a drill sergeant, and he just like stood over you and yelled for 8 hours. That you don't find obviously in our world now. I imagine it still exists out there somewhere, but it's pretty far and few between. I think that a lot of people don't realize how good of an opportunity working in the trades or residential construction can be as far as a long-term career path that you don't need to spend a bunch of time in school to prepare yourself for. So James, the Kistner, what do you got for us?
Pretty similar story to Drew. Is just like, kind of wandering post-college, and just, I had labored like worked as a laborer my whole time in high school for like one of my really good friends' grandfather's company, and kind of just flowed naturally, got out of school and just didn't really know what to do with a biology degree. So my neighbor down the street just, already knew I worked well with tools and had some like acumen for it. So, gave me an apprenticeship. So did that for about 3.5 years and learned a lot of stuff that I didn't really understand. I was learning at such a thorough level, which really kind of prepped me for, just moving on in the industry and kind of challenging myself through that. So
what I like is that it took you a biology degree to get there. It took me a biology degree plus another degree to get there. So I wasted a little more time than you did.
Yeah.
But don't you have a secondary degree?
I do, and it's a 2-year associate's degree in sustainable design. So, yeah, which it was fun to go back and get. Like, I really actually doing that work after kind of being a carpenter and starting project management in the trades and kind of already learning about that through other avenues, and then actually having to apply it in like an academic world was like really challenging and fun though. So
when you say that you weren't even aware at the time of how deep that training was, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, mostly like, there was a lot of things that like the first contractor I worked for, did my apprenticeship with, just had like not only business practice, but even going to like the sustainability end of things, just really thoughtful about like, always pressing, not wasting material, working as efficiently as possible, as thoughtful as possible, and also building as quality as possible, like a long lasting, like not building anything that wouldn't stand the test of time or be around for, a good amount of time, or someone wouldn't want to change necessarily. So it wasn't wasteful, which, I feel really, set me up for a lot of where I wanted to go. And then also, is a perfect fit for, what Opus Vitae does too. So it's like, it has really relayed into a lot of other avenues of like what I wanted to be about as I grew in my professional, career. So.
Yeah, we all have different paths that got us here. For me, I knew pretty much as a young kid that after I decided I didn't want to be a truck driver anymore, that was my first thought as a young person, is that I wanted to be a truck driver.
That's how you were 16 or so?
Right? No, cowboy boots were because I was going to always be a cowboy. So that was just, it wasn't a career. It was a life choice. But then it was, I always worked alongside my dad, who was a do-it-yourself kind of person, and when we were building chicken coops and small structures and barn additions and stuff around our place, and it was like this is for me. It just really was, and it took me a little bit of a circuitous path to get there as a young person before I realized that this is what I wanted to do for sure. But ever since then, like my senior year in high school, I did a co-op work experience in construction. And I've been in it ever since. And, and there's been ups and downs within that, but it's something that I've always loved. And I've always loved to be able to look back and be like, hey, I created that. Yeah. And that thing's going to be here for hundreds of years. And that feels pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Kind of funny, though, the ups and downs isn't necessarily with like what you get from the work itself. It's like what the industry throws at you at times, which is kind of sometimes the harder thing to navigate, it seems like.
It is, for sure. I mean, our industry is notoriously like burn people out, shoot them up, spit them out, and threw them to the side, and just brought in younger people to replace them, and younger, more unskilled people to replace them. Yeah. And that's been the thing. One of the big things that we're always trying to turn around is that no, we want to get young people in the door, show them this is a career opportunity, train them up to be the best that they can be in a multidisciplinary master carpenter scenario, not just a framer, not just a sider, not just a window setter, not just a finished carpenter, but to be a master carpenter, do all those things, because it makes them more well-rounded and marketable in their life. But also, if they stay with this company, and we hope that they do, it makes them more valuable to us because of all the things that they can do. And I think that our industry's in a terrible job of that, but we're definitely putting an effort to turn it around, at least within our sphere of influence, which isn't huge, but it's a start. So Drew, what's it been like to work at Opus Vitae?
It has been awesome working at Opus Vitae. I think.
Well, hold on, do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite?
I'm just kidding.
I think this guy's.
Oh, gee. There you go. That's perfect. Perfect answer.
I'm not going to mess with that dynamic across the table.
Kevin, do you have a favorite?
Everybody's my favorite.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
But no, truly, it's been great. I just have really felt like part of a team since the day I started. And I think kind of everybody that has already been here before me was a part of that. And that goes from, the founders down to the carpenters and everyone in between is like, you just feel support from the field staff and the office staff, but then you also get the autonomy to kind of run things how you want to, which has been really nice. And also just kind of being able to open, I guess, or pull back the curtain to different building materials that I had been following previously, but hadn't been able to work with yet. So getting to kind of touch and feel things that I know are out there, but now we're getting the chance to actually use them and try and push the limit on how good we can build things has been really, really awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's neat to be part of it. It's neat to be part of it from our side too, to see you get to experience those things and grow. That's exciting for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the things that's always on my mind as we're thinking about team dynamics is that we're trying to do some fairly auspicious things in the industry, trying to push some things that are not widely accepted or adopted. And that means if we're going to successfully do that, everyone needs to be functioning at their best. And that means it doesn't really work well for someone else to step in and micromanage you, for example. Like you said, that autonomy is super important. So finding and surrounding ourselves with the right team members so that we're all in our lane, so to speak, and doing our best work so other people can do their best work so that we can advance the bigger picture it's not a given. And whenever I look at the two of you and your work, it's front and center in my mind of what allows us to do some of the advancing the kind of work in the industry that we want to do. And I think about if I had to step into your world and manage you all the time, how miserable that would be. Just not fun for any of us.
And
yeah, for them mainly.
Yeah, right.
Well, and the whole lane thing is so important.
Yeah.
Just taking you out of your lane of what like what you need to focus on the most as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. But, I think within that autonomous sphere, it gives you the freedom to find new things, better ways, approaches, whatever, and bring them back the other direction and for us to weigh in on it and turn you loose on them. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine micromanaging anybody, to be honest with you. It's miserable for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that collaboration and that back and forth and just that kind of like, how often do we just have group conversations about like analyzing like a situation that we're all in or a new product that we're about to use or whatever. And, just it's always going to foster like an idea that you didn't have, before and maybe send you off in a better direction too. And I mean, that collaboration and just kind of that group effort is something that's been like a game changer for me, like working here as far as, and it's the industry itself is generally kind of geared more towards like, at least in the last few years, people are just, the teamwork is not front and center where, growing up for me, that was something that I kind of loved about being in the trades is that like, every day when you show up at the job site, no matter who was there, like it was kind of like a big family working on a project and everyone would be like looking out for each other or just like helping each other in their work or, even if like, the carpenters are carrying some big window through and they could tell like, it was struggling with like one of the plumbers would just like run over and help. And, that type of effort doesn't really happen as much anymore. So it seems like some of that I think is driven by what you were getting at, Kevin, with like just younger, less skilled, not necessarily like trained people, but mentored people, are, not as prevalent in the trades anymore. And then, there is kind of just I'm just here for me and a singular, mindset where I've been really appreciating that, not only with like our team, but the subs that we were choosing to work with and, also how that relates to the design teams we work with and then, even down to the clients at times. So.
Yeah, one thing that I would piggyback to what you're saying is having autonomy doesn't mean being a renegade. It's not like any of us are out doing our own thing, pushing our own agenda, that sort of thing. There is a deep sense that you could be out there and have questions about a relational situation or, like you said, a product situation, and then you come back and interact with the team about that. So it's an autonomy with support kind of a situation, which is very different because there are a lot of people in our industry who want to be a renegade or don't tell me what in the world to do. But we're not. We want to be collaborative, and we're our best selves when we're working these things out together. At least that's how I feel about it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's always better to have four minds looking at something than just one.
Sure.
Yeah.
No matter how great that mind is.
Yeah. I mean, in any moment, like no matter like, what is going on, you're going to have certain distractions that are in your way,
Right.
So you're only able to look at something, through a certain specific lens. And when you have that, backup, then, that's when the new idea comes from, or maybe something that, just saves the day for you, really,
Right.
to say it simply. So.
For sure. So we had a meeting with a new subcontractor yesterday morning, and they came to us through an architect that we use all the time. And one of the things that they said in like regurgitating what the architect told them was this, and it was really kind of profound. And they said, the architect said, listen, when you go to meet with them, you have to understand they accept nothing less than quality.
Yeah.
That is their standard, high quality, period. They will not do anything beyond that. And it's like, wow, because like we sort of live it every day, but you sort of forget that that's what you do because it's part of, what you do. But to hear somebody, like, I guess, speak it back to you, it was pretty profound. Yeah, it was, I guess, moving is what I would say.
And that's not their typical experience, right?
Right.
They're in search of that because the husband of this duo who work together is the one who actually puts the work in place. And he's a really meticulous dude. And he wants to be able to do that, but he's not often asked to do that.
Yeah, because he probably, how often is it where what it takes to do the quality level, and especially on the subcontractor end, the contractor who's asking him to perform the work is like, well, how do we make that cheaper? Like, I get where you're coming from, but we need to do that a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's always about how do we do it cheap?
Yeah.
How do you get your cost down?
Yeah.
No, that's too much money. Do it for less. Well, what happens in that environment, right? Because the guy's got to pay his people. He's got to pay himself. So what strings are you pulling on to make it less expensive?
Yeah.
Quality.
Yeah.
Materials.
I mean, time spent and
right.
Yeah. What you put into it.
Right. Moving
Yeah.
away from natural materials and going into more synthetic stuff that is less expensive, but yet worse for the workers and then worse for the person that lives in the home.
Yeah.
And so it's like somebody's paying that bill somewhere. It might not be in money now.
Yeah.
But it's going to be in health later.
Well, and I mean, even money later, I was thinking, as the whole time you were saying that, I was thinking that's like, yeah, the upfront cost might be cheaper, but that's where I feel like, it often falls off in people's minds is like, what is the overall long-term cost going to be for me?
Right.
And, we were kind of making the joke in the company meeting the other day about, it was cheap for the first 5 years.
Yeah,
And then when it starts falling apart or you start getting sick from whatever environment you're in, then like that cost is, 2x, 3 times as much as what the initial cost was. And then you're basically wasting all the upfront cost as well too. So
Right, for sure. And the reality too, and I know that it's never as simple as it sounds, but at the time of construction, it's never going to be more affordable to do it at that moment than it will be to try and fix it later or add something later.
no, I think that's
That's just the reality.
Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes people really get sort of their focus moves to aesthetics and the things that they can touch and feel as being more important than the structure itself. But I'm here to tell you that it's the structure itself that protects you from the elements, keeps you comfortable. The stuff that you touch and feel on the inside are things that are easily changed out later if you decide to do that. But the structure itself is the thing that everybody needs to really put their money into and their focus. And we see it somewhat the opposite in most scenarios. And it's unfortunate. I also understand that most of our clients, this is not their world. It's ours. My ask for them is to listen to the professionals that are telling them, hey, listen, I've been doing this for 35 years. I probably know something. I've probably seen a lot of things out there. And I've seen lots of failure. And I love seeing failure because we get to learn from it.
Yeah.
And like that's the best teacher I've ever had is Mr. Failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Success is
Lessons
fun.
in life.
Right. But Mr. Failure is the one that really teaches you the hard lesson.
Yeah.
What is it about our process? And I don't want to get into like, minutia here, but what is it? I'll ask this of you, Drew. Like, what is it about our process that our different process than most other contractors that is intriguing to you? Like maybe one specific thing that you like that we do that you haven't experienced in your career, besides good snacks.
Great snacks. I think time or expectation of time, and I think that kind of translates into, the time that you guys expect us to spend working in a day, because we all know that this industry, like you mentioned, can burn you out. We could work endlessly and still not catch up, but also expectations with our clients and not getting ourselves basically, pushed into a certain schedule or overwhelmed by, I have to move in by this date. We're getting to drive that. And that process has been really relieving because it's been set with the expectation with the clients and with the trades of not, hey, I need you to do this in 2 days. More having the opportunity to say, how much time do you need? And then build the schedule and have everything flow from that, which then in turn I think has related back to, our working hours, where it's a big relief to just know that everything is understood by the clients, by the designers, and by us, that there isn't this big push always to get it done, get it done, get it done. It's more take your time. What do you need from us? And, how are we going to do this the best way we possibly can?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, actually, I really like that thought in a lot of ways, because it does go back to just getting the best product and getting the best quality. And also I don't know how many endless conversations I've had with clients before of, you actually have to live I know that this needs to be done or it's expected to be done by a certain day, but if we can't deliver that, if that's not enough time to get the quality or the product that you're actually paying for, then you're going to be living with an inferior product that you spent money on for a lot of time. And although, we've all talked about how stressful the remodel process is for clients and how we're sensitive to that. It's in the bigger picture, it's a small amount of time, even when we run over schedule, expected schedule, than life in the project. So I think, really talking about that and focusing on that with, as many people as possible that are in the process of the project is important.
No, I agree. Because yes, in the moment to the client, if a project takes a month longer because of unforeseens or scope change or whatever, that it's impactful to their world, but that month of an additional scope or additional duration to get the project done as intended and really well is far greater to their enjoyment and their long-term value of what we just did than hurrying it along just for the sake of hurrying it along.
Yeah.
I've had so many conversations with clients at the beginning of the project when we're setting expectations about how things are going to go. And I'm telling them that I'll establish a schedule for them by a certain point in time. And that in that schedule, there will be some days that they notice on their calendar that we make available to them that there's nothing happening. And what happens, for example, if we give the plumber 2 weeks and it takes him a week and a half? Am I going to go into the schedule and fuss around with it a little bit, push everyone forward? And I've said to clients, no, we're not going to do that. And they're immediately taken aback. Why would we not do that? We could save some time on the project. And what they don't stop to realize is all the layers of other disruption that would be caused by doing that. My additional time, the hours that would be required for me to do that work are going to cost them. The subcontractors rely on our schedules when building their own schedules, and we have a relational capital with them that needs to be honored, and a whole bunch of other things. So no, at those times, enjoy those couple of days of quiet. We're right on track. We haven't changed our expectation for the end goal that we're crossing. And it's come back so many times when clients are like, oh, it actually was really nice to have a couple days of quiet and know that we were moving ahead as expected.
Yeah, it's still not going behind from it, just, in
right.
the place we need to be.
Yeah, but we've had scenarios where we use up those extra days
very much
because there was a hiccup somewhere along the way, like a material didn't show when it was supposed to, or whatever the case may be. And so having those pad days in there definitely,
it's invaluable.
It is, right? Because it takes the stress level down. because we've planned for some things to not go well.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just thinking that it's the hardest. I think that's like one aspect of managing projects that I feel like a lot of people have the hardest time understanding is that like we're navigating a bunch of intangibles and a bunch of like things that like we have absolutely no control over. I mean, like we're trying to set up the project flow to be as best as it can be based on our working knowledge. But, like you were saying, kind of material or just, I mean, how often, especially in like the world of like the time we just passed through COVID where whole subcontracting crews would be down for a week and there's absolutely nothing you can do about that, and just trying to put those pieces back together after those big disruptions is a ton of work. And, having some pad days in the schedule, really, really allows that to have a little bit of ebb and flow that doesn't break the whole project cycle.
Oh, for sure.
I remember having a cabinet shop that was supposed to deliver cabinets on a given day, and the truck that was supposed to bring them broke down.
Yeah.
And they called me. They're like, is there any way we can wait until tomorrow to deliver these cabinets? I'm like, well, you're in luck. I have extra days allotted for you. They're like, oh, thank goodness that you have that. And one of the things I've told clients a number of times about a scenario like that is not only do we relieve stress for our subcontractors when we can be flexible to a degree within our schedule, but also we end up having our subs who are wanting to help us out later on, like they will double back down in a heartbeat if we're treating them with respect with regard to their schedule. Yeah. When we need something, they'll double back and make ours work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking out for the subcontractor is a very, very like valuable thing to do, and actually that's like when we were kind of talking about just the group effort in general. I mean, that's one of the things about that I've appreciated working here is just like the quality level of the subs with that and the mindfulness of the people that we work with on that level and their willingness to double back, like you were saying, help us out when we need it,
And a lot of the times, like you're talking about scenario, like that, like graciousness or that flexibility comes as a shock because they're picking up the phone ready to just,
get yelled at,
get an earful.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we're all good. And then it's like, I mean, it's unfortunate that it is that way, but it translates into the next project and everything else. The conversations just turn so much more mellow just by having that forethought to plan ahead and think about those scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. So the direction the company's heading, and we haven't really talked about it much here in this forum, but we're doing some pretty cool things and we're pioneering some stuff, not like as the first people to ever do it, but more of the people are trying to bring it a little bit more mainstream. And so James, what about some of the things that we're doing, are the directions that we're heading as a company excite you the most?
Yeah. I mean, just the overall, focus on just changing the building industry to like really accept, sustainability practice and health practices. And, I mean, I know you guys have heard me so many times in the office just talking about the fact that like eventually we're going to be forced into it just by the amount of, resources that are left on this planet, and I think that since there still is, what is perceived as an abundance, the construction industry isn't really like wanting to make those changes yet, because they're not forced to, or like, your average, kind of developer, spec home builder doesn't have to do that either, on any level. And, the way that they make their margins is by, cutting costs as much as possible and not having to think that. But I mean, eventually it's going to come for them too. It's going to, everyone is going to be forced to work within a restriction of where things are coming from, how much they cost, and like the energy that goes into them. And I just, the being able to be out ahead of that and make that a focus has always been really important to me. And we spend, I mean, humans spend the majority of their lives in buildings, I mean, we all like to hang out and have fun outside, but humans don't exist without buildings, and we don't exist on this planet without resources. So I mean, just the whole cumulative nature of the work really to me is kind of what excites me the most.
Drew, what about you?
I'd say, my answer is probably pretty similar to James's.
You can just say ditto, and that'll be fine.
What he said. No, but I think it's an accumulation of that, and then your conversation with what the architect had passed along about quality, and kind of meshing those two together to where we have the opportunity to do the things that are behind the scenes, behind all the pretty stuff, the cabinets, the tile, all that stuff that when guests walk in, they see this, beautiful home, but what they don't know is that we have spent countless hours working to make the envelope and the air that they're breathing as healthy as possible. And I think that has been probably one of the most invigorating things about thinking where we're headed.
One of the things that you just said that really sparked another comment in my mind was on the quality of just it's like that, doing these types of projects force everyone to build at a higher quality level, which to me is another fun thing because of growing up and learning about carpentry, and we always talk about watching This Old House back in the day and what we got from that, and just even how they used to build older homes. It just seemed I think part of the allure of why we all got into the trades at some point was the craftsmanship part of it,
right.
And a lot of that has been lost in the last 20 years with just how homes are being built or what the market directs. And it's pretty fun to bring that kind of craftsmanship back into the build process and the products that we use. So.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's interesting you brought up This Old House, which is not a sponsor of ours, by the way, because so many of us in the trades grew up watching those shows, and when you're a young person watching them, you don't think about the impact that it's having, right? Because you're kind of in the moment. Mm-hmm. But that one show, I think, has touched our industry probably the most, believe it or not, which is pretty crazy. And the reality is that it's probably one of the most honest shows compared to all the other stuff that's out there that's, more of a scripted, drama.
Not glam it up on any level. They're just being very straightforward and really, even when they don't have the opportunity to, which they have been focusing a lot more on just more sustainable practices and better quality products. It's always been about just turning over the best product and how do you build this thing in the best way possible. And
for sure.
Yeah.
I remember, the conflict in my head of what I would see them do on This Old House versus what I'd be asked to do on the job site.
And you're why can't I do that?
Exactly. And then it was it's just a West Coast, East Coast sort of thing. And it kind of is, unfortunately the West Coast is, younger, and the mentality is more of throwaway, build it fast homes. Who cares? We'll be moved in 5 years. That's somebody else's problem. And I think the mindset's a bit different, and they're looking to, build homes that will last many generations. I'm not sure why it differs, but it just does. And I would love to see the West Coast beat the East Coast in terms of no, we're going to build things to last forever here. Yeah. Very much like they do in Europe.
Yeah.
I've got a question that sort of piggybacks off the craftsman comment that you made. I know I got to a certain age or a certain point in my career where I started looking toward I'm in a diminishing number of years left, and I want to make sure that those years count. Maybe this question's more for you, James, not because you're older than Drew or anything, but maybe.
Wait, I am.
But I'm just thinking for both of you, as you get further and further along in your construction career, are there marks that you would like to leave behind?
Well, I guess the older I get and the more experience I have with how time is spent, I really want that effort to go into stuff that is, built with more meaning. I would much rather leave, products behind that were built with meaning than just, were built for margin. And that's really important to me. So
that's a cool thought. Yeah. Meaning over margin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually pretty profound. So if I seem surprised right now, it's genuine. No, I'm just joking. But no, that's pretty profound, really, because our industry has been very much a race to the bottom. Who can do it cheapest. Yeah. I hear that constantly, way more than I want to hear. Yeah. How do we do it cheaper? What can we do? How can we save money? Where can we save money? And I get that there's places where we do need to save money. Yeah. And there's this thing I like to say, it's a toggle switch, right? You pull back in places that don't matter, and you spend money in the places that do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a delicate balance.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah.
Same question for you, though. Do you, at this point in your construction career, have a set of things that you would like to leave behind or that you aspire to?
I don't know about a set of things that I've specifically thought about, but I think one thing that has kind of been in my mind for years now is the fact that I grew up with obviously the residential construction industry right, behind me, not even knowing that it could be a career. And all through high school, it was, business classes, and in college, business classes. I would like to help young adults know that this is a great option and that you can make a good living doing something active and being a part of a team and be outdoors if you like it, or indoors. There's options for both. And I think that has always kind of struck me, that even somebody that lived right in it and was on job sites as a kid, helping measure houses and all these things, still never really knew that this was a viable option. So I think I'd like to hopefully pass that down.
I'm a person who enjoys relationships and people a lot. Previously, I worked in a profession where people were what I was working with on a regular basis. People, you don't start working with them and see an end result and then move on. It's not that simple. It takes much longer, and there's something deeply satisfying, isn't there, about starting a project, knowing what your end goal is, working hard toward it, getting it done, seeing it be realized and beautiful, and then moving on. There's something that really appeals to a lot of people about that, and I wish more people had that sense of, I just know, like Kevin said, I just know that I want to build.
Yeah.
That would be a wonderful thing.
It would, for sure. I mean, but we're fighting against, like the current societal norms of like, hey, if you're the dummy that's in wood shop, there's no future for you. College is everything. But I think that we've seen a lot of people that, go through higher education and turn out and like, they don't even know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And it's also a big ask for somebody in modern times. It's like 18 or 19 years old to pick what it is they want to do for the rest of their life and then go study and do it.
I think it's unfair, really.
Totally.
Yeah. It really is, because we're certainly at that age, not, we don't have enough life experience to really make those decisions.
Yeah. But
For the most part.
For sure, I'm sure you as well too, but all of us probably were in that moment being kind of pushed in that same direction, at that time. And it's really, for me, like having a 19-year-old daughter who's, doing that right now, it's really been eye-opening as to like what you should push on and what you shouldn't, and
right.
I think that like allowing people to discern what their options are and even maybe try things out a little bit is just so important to their character building, their maturing, and then who knows where when people aren't like so narrowly herded, then
right.
you get a lot of different things from that,
You do, for sure. And the other thing too that I think is really important is building that self-confidence and pride in what you do, right?
Yeah.
When you do something, and we see it all the time where we'll go to one of our projects and one of the carpenters will be like, hey, look at this thing over here. And it's like, that's an incredible piece of work that you did.
Yeah.
And the pride that they get from that, and then it rubs off, right? Because then we're prideful of, the work that they've done. And it's like, I remember when you first started, you couldn't do these things, and now you can, and now you can do it with confidence. And it's really cool to be part of that.
And
it's
you
like
take the initiative yourself.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you don't, we don't have to point out the things to do next. You already know what they're going to be. Or if there's this problem, you'll bring it to us and say, hey, I can't figure this thing out. Let's talk through it.
Yeah.
And that's always a lot of fun for me anyway.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we hope will happen, and we're leaning into with the apprenticeship program, is that as carpenters develop through their stages of learning, that at first it's learning what the appropriate moves are, what the appropriate safety mechanisms are, and so forth, how to do the tasks at hand. And as you develop more as a carpenter, your vision expands, and you start to see more than just what you're working on. You start to see what other people are working on and the impacts of what you're doing might have on them. And then you begin to be able to anticipate, what you're going to need into the future. And all of those things are, I don't know, there's a deep satisfaction about knowing something well enough to anticipate what's coming. Yeah, there's a lot of joy in that.
There definitely is. We've sort of talked about this a little bit already, but I'm just going to, I guess drive it home a little bit. But in your opinion, and you can each answer it independently, is the residential construction career path a good one for people to investigate?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think it depends. I think that it gives you a lot of different options of like Drew was saying, you can choose to work outside, you can choose to work inside, you can choose to be a carpenter, you can choose to be an electrician. I mean, there's a lot of different facets that you can, or I guess angles you can take with it. The other thing that, kind of to piggyback on what Paul was saying about that I do think is just you hear that a lot where people are like, wow, it's really cool to like walk away from a finished product and be like, I built that like that. I mean, you just don't get that in a lot of careers. I mean, even in other like, I don't want to, I guess I'm trying not to be dismissive of any sort of career path, but I mean, even in very highly educated careers, you don't necessarily get that type of like reward, I mean, it's like, a lot of jobs are just singularly focused. You just show up, sit at your desk, do your thing all day, and you walk away, and you might not even know what it is that you're contributing to like a larger, or what larger project you're contributing to. And in our world, like it's just in your face every single day. Like you're getting to see that progress and that change happen like every single day. So
yeah.
Mr. Drew, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I think kind of like what I was just saying. I think it's absolutely a great path. I think it allows you to do like what James said. I mean, there's so many different avenues within the industry that you can spend time as a carpenter and find out that, oh, I'd rather, be in management, or I'd rather go do sales for, any amount of companies. And there's so many different things you can do and still, be a part of a team, be outside or working on somebody's home. And like we've kind of talked about numerous times, is that teamwork aspect to create something and then have either, a designer or a client walk in and be like, wow, you guys did it. Like, and our whole team being able to witness that, it's really, truly satisfying. And just like you said, you get a lot of pride from it. It just kind of makes you feel good when you go home at the end of the day and you've been thanked for creating somebody's vision. I think that's something that you don't see a lot in other industries. So I think it's kind of something pretty unique and awesome that we get to experience.
Yeah, I've heard people say stuff like, what you guys do is tangible, right? You can see it at the end of the day, and they compare it to their work and they're like, yeah, I did a paper, or, I wrote a report. Like, who cares? That's something that is a moment in time and it goes away and never to be seen again. But what we do, like, is there for long time, and it's kind of fun sometimes too. Like if I drive by projects that I worked on 20 years ago and be like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that. I've forgotten a fair amount, just to be fair, but there's still some I remember, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that one. It's kind of fun. It's a little fun down memory lane. If you were to be able to talk to somebody that was considering working with us or just doing a construction project in general, whether it's a new home or a renovation or whatever, what advice would you have, James? What would you tell them? And not in a salesman sort of manner, but like, hey, you really need to be paying attention to these things kind of stuff.
Wow. There's a
Is that hard for you?
That's a lot. There's a lot in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think the average person, like the average client that goes into a project, goes in with a lot of misinformation and also doesn't know a lot of the things that they're going to know, or even aware of some of the things that they're going to be asked. And so it, to make decisions on and to have an opinion about, and I think that can get really like cumbersome really quickly for them. I think that it's, and I think that I just think that like kind of advocating for taking time to really make sure that you're being thorough and not to rush the design process and not to rush like even just letting your contractor figure out the work, like doing the pre-construction work and such is just, it's so valuable. I mean, it's just, you don't, even once you go into construction, you're gonna be answering 2,000 questions about different things. And that's not the moment you wanna be really, like while things are being put together, you don't really wanna be making decisions if you don't have to, because it's just, they're gonna be made from a lens of stress and other things going on in your life. So just really allowing that whole like design and pre-construction process to be nurtured and take the time it needs to get to the point where everyone's on the same page and just bringing your whole team in as early as possible, I think is really the most valuable thing, I think, really too. And also to not put like undue, I know like a lot, it is people's homes working in and they have their lives and their social situations to be involved with, but to not put a I guess a schedule end goal. Like don't base your project on a wedding or a baby or something. I mean it's just gonna make everything that much more stressful. And I always make the joke about, it's like every holiday season, how many clients come to us and are like, are we going to be ready for Christmas? And like, it's one Christmas, like there's plenty of other avenues to have that Christmas. And it's just, I just feel like, again, it just causes like, undue stress and oftentimes bad decision making, just you end up with things that, in hindsight, you probably wish, would have made a different choice. But again, when you're just making those decisions in the moment and under duress, you're going to make a different decision than when you have the time to really sit with it and think about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's in my mind, the design pre-construction process and even into construction, it's more of a marathon mentality and not a sprint. Because if you're going to sprint and go fast, there's going to be a lot of stuff that gets missed.
You might as well just go buy a spec home.
Right.
It's like, because that's what that game is, the sprint. So,
right. So Drew.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of piggyback on a lot of that.
You don't get to copy anything James said. Completely new.
Wow.
Oh man, that's gonna be hard to do. Great minds think alike. So. But no, I would just say, I think that a lot of, whether it's the client, the designer, or the trades, even have, they've all had the experience of the contractor that is just by the seat of their pants, no communication. And so they come in with that expectation of, oh my gosh, we're going to take on this big project. We're going to spend a lot of our, hard-earned money on this. And I just hope it goes well. And I think we are helping push the industry to like kind of rid ourselves of that expectation, because building trust in the pre-construction phase and just in the preliminary meetings of, the horror story that you or your neighbor might have, you're not going to get that. And everything's going to be thought out, planned, and communicated. And I think that's just the biggest thing, is to ease people's mind as early as possible that this is, there's going to be times where this isn't enjoyable because, it's construction and it's messy and
in your house.
Yeah. And whether it's new construction or a remodel, there's, it's stressful. It just is. And so there's going to be times where there's give and take, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a great experience, and it's going to be totally different than anything that you've heard or expected from previous, projects or neighbors or friends or family members and all the horror stories that people seem to have from other contractors.
Part of what allows that to be true, and I think it's very true, when you walk into a process and it's disorganized from the beginning, it's not well conceived, it's not fully conceived, and then you're stepping into the build process, we were talking, or I was mentioning just a couple of minutes ago, that when carpenters start, they know what the task is at hand, and then they start to grow in their understanding of all the layers of impact that has. Well, it's the same sort of thing in reverse. Our clients are coming from that same position of next to no understanding in general about those projects, and they're relying on us as a team to have a much more expansive view of the thing. And if we're telling them this project is going to be complex in a bunch of ways, we need to really get to the bottom of this before we start demoing this house and or putting it back together or building it afresh. If they trust us with that and allow us to take the time and to pull on all the strings that are necessary to get to the bottom of how we're going about this, it's really, really helpful. We've just been through experience, James, or are in an experience where a client wanted some changes on a project that were related to some complicated interconnected pieces. So deck and door heights and floor heights and other things that were all dramatically interrelated. And it's not the client's fault that they don't understand what happens when you tug on one of those. Yeah. But really, it is sort of like a sweater unraveling. Like the whole thing starts to unravel, and the plan that we have put in place starts to unravel. And we're okay to do that. It just takes time and brings frustration. So it's so important to get started on the right foot. And yes, there are going to be deviations when things are requested of us in the process.
Yeah, and kind of like, as tedious as that front end and time consuming as it can feel in that moment, it's still going to be faster than if you're figuring those things out while people are trying to build it, and you get stalls and holdups and things that come at you from left field. So
for sure. We always talk about how it's inexpensive to make changes on paper, but not in the field.
Yeah.
And but that's a bit different than our industry is sort of geared towards. And so we get, some people that with raised eyebrows when we talk about that. And it's like, well, is that really necessary? Contractor B we talk to doesn't do it that way. Yeah. And he says, we don't even need a designer or an architect. Like they'll figure it out. Yeah. And my response is good luck. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's great. We don't want any part of that. We want to have it figured out before we start. So like Paul said, I mean, it's like when you start on a good foot, only goodness follows it. When you start in chaos, only chaos follows it.
No, that's for sure.
There's been a bit of a, what's the word I want to use? Like controversy in our office about the correct way to eat string cheese.
I'm glad you went there, because you're going to be put on display.
Well, I'm more of a role model for how to do it correctly. So string cheese, in my humble opinion, is opened cold. It's cold. It's not put in somebody's pocket to warm up or a windowsill, but it's cold out of the refrigerator. You open it up and you eat it like you would any other like solid item. You take a bite, you chew it, you eat it. Okay. I mean, and really string cheese is ultimately mozzarella sticks without the breading or the sauce to dip it in.
Oh, see, that's a new perspective you haven't offered yet in your argument.
James, I'm
trying to bolster his position.
I'm a bit of a mystery, and I can't reveal everything at once. This, that's part of my strategy. Paul, now, how is it that you eat string cheese?
Well, mostly just take it and pull the pieces off it. Now, if you're talking about the warmed element of it, that's an optional element. But sometimes warmed string cheese, whether it be in the windowsill or in my back pocket, is the right option.
Okay. And does any of that seem weird to anybody else? Because it does to me. Just saying. Thank you, Mike. You guys can't see Mike on camera, but he's a good man. He's a good man.
But yeah, it's the peeling it part that's really at issue here, Kevin. Let's not make subsequent issues the main attraction here.
I think we need to talk about them all. Really.
Right.
Yeah, because the temperature matters, I think. But why is it that pulling apart in little tiny shreds of like almost like human hair, why is that like appetizing to you?
Drew,
and there's only one way to eat a string cheese,
right?
And that is
called a string cheese because you pull it into strings and then you eat it. Usually cold, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there.
I can go with cold.
Usually you see toddlers just eat it like a stick of beef jerky or something, and everybody else.
It's fitting.
Is it toddlers do that because they're underdeveloped, or toddlers do that because they haven't been jaded by society yet?
I don't know.
And they're somewhat
philosophical.
Brilliant and simplistic in their approach.
You're winning me with a little bit of the simplicity, but I still, I don't know. I grew up. I mean, I unfortunately can't really partake in the string cheese eating for dietary reasons, but I grew up pulling them apart myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you both know my brother too. He was he bit the tops off of it.
Good for him.
Savagely.
He's a good man.
When he was a kid. So I mean, I think it was mixed at our house, but everyone always gave Patrick the benefit of the doubt. So.
Patrick's a good man, James. That's all I'm saying. Our carpentry team that we have, because we do in-house carpentry for many reasons. One of it being we want to give a career path for people. Help train them up to be great carpenters, master carpenters. But also it allows us to control the work in a lot of scenarios. And our carpentry team's really they're near and dear to my heart. I know pretty much everybody here. They're wonderful people. But if you want each of you to kind of speak a little bit about the team and what about having in-house carpentry and that team in particular that you really enjoy?
Well, I think that they definitely bring a comfort level to the job site for both the client and for us project managers, as far as knowing that we're not going to be left in the dark throughout the day as far as what's going on and problems that come up. And then there's obviously the reassurance that Drew and I have that know that the work is going to be done correctly and thoughtfully, where you don't always necessarily, if you're having a subcontractor do the work, they run into a problem, they make a decision for themselves, they give you they give you an end product which isn't what you're expecting, you don't know about till you show up the next day and see it, which I feel like that just doesn't happen with our crews, and they just do bring a comfort level and assurance to the project, and that I think that also that I first mentioned that the client feels too when they're around our team, and we always do get compliments from the clients about how they what they feel about the experiences when our team is in their house, but it just is really just the overall confidence of knowing that the work is going to be done right, and then if you have if there are problems, that you're going to be made aware of it. And what I like the most about our team is that they often already coming to you with, even at times, a couple different solutions to the problem. So they're not just like, what do I do next? They're like, well, I've thought about it this way, and here are and which is great, because oftentimes when people bring problems to, Drew's and I's position, we have to play a bit of catch up to get to the answer, because we're like, we don't even know, we're being told a problem that's has a singularity to it, but in the reality there's so many other things that are interacting with that, and so we need to go back and get a bunch of information in order to make a decision on one direction, and I just feel like our field team really helps us navigate that and bolsters our decision making in the process. So.
Definitely. I think kind of, again, just to touch on another thing that you mentioned, is the relationship aspect of that, of going in at demo or framing and having our crew spend time either in somebody's house or at somebody's house if they're not living there, and getting to know the clients themselves, so that when we come back for, whether it's installing bath accessories or handrails or whatever it may be, they're excited to see them again, because they've had that interaction for however many days or weeks it takes at the first phase, and then to close that loop. And I've gotten multiple compliments from clients of just, I'll text them, say, hey, so and so is going to be here 8 a.m. They're like, oh, great, haven't seen him for a while, or and it really is nice for James and I, knowing that if we have to be at another job site or on a Zoom call or whatever it may be, that our team's going to show up at whatever time they're supposed to, and they're going to be ready to work, and they're going to be clean, and you don't have to worry about some subcontractor might show up at 8, but they might get a flat tire and you don't hear from them, or whatever the case may be. And So I think that is a huge weight off of our shoulders, is to have such a trustworthy team that also loves taking initiative. That's one thing I've noticed, that anytime there is something that comes up, they're like eager. It's not like, hey, you need to figure this out for me. I don't have the information. It's like, hey, I came into this, but we can do X, Y, or Z, or, you know, we're talking through stuff on the phone and I don't think that's going to work. And then, okay, what do you think? And they really enjoy that process, which I think is something that you don't always find. So it's pretty unique. And I think it's, like I said, it's a huge relief for us, knowing that just everything's going to be dialed.
We're running a little short on time, but there's a question about your roles specifically that I want to ask. I've been managing job sites for the last 10 years, basically. And the more I look at that position that you're occupying right now, I think it's one of the most comprehensively complicated jobs that I can think of, because of the need to have a lot of acumen about what's going on the job site in a broad way. So not only our carpenters, but more broadly the other trades. It's a lot of forethought and trying to think through scenarios that haven't yet developed, that may develop, and anticipating those things. A ton of client and subcontractor expectation setting and management about what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, anticipating again where things might derail or get difficult, having difficult conversations with them, et cetera, and scheduling months in advance and handling finance and, you know, carry on down the list. Each of you has embraced that sort of a role. There's a sort of a why behind that. If Christine were here, she said this to me many times. She's like, you have the worst job in the world. And she says that with all due respect, knowing that there are people like us who have done that job and actually like it. So 2 parts. One thing that you really like about being a project manager, and if there was something that's the hardest part or something that's the most regularly challenging, what would that be?
Oh, man.
We're going to have you go first, Drew, so you can't steal James's answer.
Okay. That's a great question. I enjoy a lot of aspects of it. I think the teamwork is one of my favorite things, just because you get to pull so many different people and personalities. And I was up at a job site this morning, and the guys that were there are like some of my favorite people to see now, because you know that they're going to show up at 8 a.m. and they are going to be ribbing each other like this. As soon as they open their car doors, it's going to be just jokes and banter. And so getting the mixture of, you know, sitting at your desk and grinding through the details of scheduling or budgeting and, you know, whatever that may be, but then also getting up to a job site where people are a little more laid back and you get to laugh and kind of forget about all of the, you know, stressful conversations that you may be having to have regarding the, you know, change order or budget, whatever that, you know, may bring. So I think that's something I really enjoy, is just the diversity of relationships, and just the role in itself. One of my least favorite things, I think one of my least favorite things is just the unknown of residential construction, of how many times where we get into a project and you just don't know what you're going to run into. So you spend all this time building a schedule, setting an expectation with, you know, multiple people, and then you walk in and it's, oh, didn't expect that to be there, or, you know, something happens, and that is where I think my OCD kicks in, of like, you've had these experiences where you run into those things and you're like, oh, what if that happens here? Then how am I going to react? And it's like trying to just push that away as much as possible, I think.
The unknowns is tough. The unknowns is really, like this morning, you know, I spent a good portion of the beginning of this week setting up for like this window delivery to, you know, one of our projects. And, you know, it's complicated for a lot of reasons. Like, where are we going to put the windows? How are we going to stage them? Who's going to be there to receive them based on all the other work? Because, you know, it's like the delivery window is kind of a moving target till they're like in the,
Right.
you know.
Yep.
And so we, you know, I mean, and even like the last day or yesterday, it was like a big effort on both mine and Edward's to like figure out how we're going to navigate that. So then, you know, I get a call this morning as I'm heading over here, asking us, well, if we're going to have a forklift ready to unload the glass. Because all the glass is being shipped out of the units and on separate A-frames up to 9 feet tall. And this is, set to be delivered on Tuesday, which then changes the whole dynamic of like how we need to do this, because we didn't plan for a place to just have glass sitting around. And now we're talking, do we have the glass sent at a different day? And then what does that do to like setting, the window? Like, we set all the frames, which is great, but then do we have open windows in this house for a moment of time where people are living in it? So, it's just like it's you're hit with that stuff all day long. But I would say that is a tough one. But I would say, for me, I think the hardest thing to navigate is the expectation setting. I just think that like, you have so many different people coming into a project that all are coming in to work on it, including the client, being in the project from a different expectation and different angle. And that group of individuals is constantly changing throughout the cycle of the process and the project. So just really getting everyone to understand where everyone else is coming from, what language they're speaking, and why it's necessary that their part is involved and meaningful, and then when it is in conflict with someone else's expectations, navigating that. I think that really is just the hardest overall aspect of the job, and the like, what is an expectation is such a broad thing too. It can just be about time, money, personnel, weather, like, I thought we were going to be doing this in May. Well, we didn't start the project till 2 months after we thought we were going to. So now it's July. How about that? Just all of those things. But my favorite thing about it too is very similar to Drew's, is just the teamwork and being relied on to be like kind of the person who's like navigating the team, and just, I just like putting the puzzle together, it's a lot of fun. And I think there's just a lot of nuance that goes to it, and just also a lot of like fun challenges of like, kind of doing that, future casting and trying to figure out like which way is the right way, and risk management and all that it's just a fun puzzle to be a part of.
So I'm one more question, then we're gonna wrap on this episode. And so I would like you to describe it in as few words as you can. But how would you describe, Drew, the culture of our company from your perspective?
Describe the culture of the company. I think it truly does feel just like one big team or family, where there's a whole bunch of different personalities, like our string cheese debate.
It's just a microcosm of every day's conversation.
But I think there's also just a ton of flexibility of character, where everybody is comfortable enough and feels support, whether it's in their role or just, that they can be themselves too. So I think it's a phenomenal culture of letting people grow. I think there's a growth mindset in almost every person here, but also that what we do should be fun, and that it's not, like we've talked about the race to the bottom, where everything is thoughtful, and the relationships are thoughtful, the work is thoughtful, and I think everything that I've seen about the culture is done with purpose. And so I think that, I guess, would be how I would best describe it.
I walked into the office, or I was in the office, James, and you walked in. It was the first time you'd seen me after I was back from my vacation.
Yeah.
And Kevin was rolled around on his chair beside me.
Yeah.
And you laughed as you came down the hallway because it looked like, hey, the bros are back together. And I could just see it on your face. Like that sense of, oh, Kevin's been missing Paul. he's that's what you were thinking, right?
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let the record show I was missing him.
Yeah.
I think that goes for the group. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear Drew say that though, actually. So, did you miss Paul while he was
Paul,
gone?
absolutely.
Okay, all right, okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I would say for me, the two biggest parts of the culture that I enjoy the most and seem to be the ethos is just is collaboration and it being supportive. I think that and and purposeful too. I did like that word, Drew, a lot. I think that like, you know, we are very much doing things in purpose, and everyone, you know, is coming at it from that angle. But yeah, just the collaboration and support is really different and important.
Well, I mean, you guys are special. I mean, I don't just say that to be saying it. You guys are, you know, I mean, everybody at our company is special. Everybody could not be replaced. There might be somebody else that could do a similar job, but they just couldn't be replaced. And so we very much appreciate having you guys on the team, and love it. Yeah. So,
thanks for being here today with us in this conversation.
Thank you.
It's fun.
Okay, so we're done with episode 4.
Thank you for joining us on our episode today. We had a lot of fun talking with our guests. We really enjoyed the conversation, and we'll be looking forward to you when our next content comes out.